In every expensive format, it's always a good idea to have a meta-viable budget deck waiting in the wings, and Floowandereeze has proven itself to be as reliable as it is cheap. So here's how the deck works. Floowandereeze is based on the journey of the Arctic Terns that are migrating all the way from the North Pole to the Antarctic. But unlike in real life, the journey of these birds usually starts in the UK with the Normal Summon of Robina. With Robina, you can then travel to either Australia, South America, or the USA. But if you grab Eglen, you can then resolve Robina and normal summon Eglen to let you search for Empen. Then you can resolve Eglen and tribute summon Empen to the field by banishing both of your birds. From here, you can use Empen's effect to search for Dreaming Town, but you'll also want to use Robina's effect in banishment to add itself back to your hand. This gives you Empen on the field, which prevents the activation of the effects of all special summoned attack position monsters. A banished Eglen that can be added to hand later, and a set Dreaming Town with Robina in hand. This seems pretty innocuous at first, but this setup is deceptively strong, because one of the core components of Floowandereeze's playstyle is that it plays on both players' turns. So during your opponent's turn, you activate Dreaming Town, during your main phase normal summon Robina, and uses effect as Chainlink 1 on your banished Eglen as Chainlink 2 to add itself back to hand. With Robina's effect, you can add just about anything you'd like, but when it resolves, you have the opportunity to normal summon Eglen again and search for another tribute summon. You could search for Empen like before for some extra follow-up, but you can also grab negation, removal, or a way to set your opponent's field. This is some amazing interaction, but the reason why Floowandereeze can apply so much pressure is that due to how recursive its engine is, so long as you succeed in comboing off in turn 1, you get to perform this combo every single turn and drown in card advantage. But let's take a look under the hood to see what makes this deck so recursive. There are 3 main features of the Floowandereeze engine: the little birds, big birds, and back row. With the little birds, you're always playing 3 copies of Robina and 3 copies of Eglen, since they're your best starters. However, most Floo decks usually only play 1 to 2 copies at most of Toucan and Stree, because while they have pretty great effects and are solid extenders, they can't really combo off on their own and are extremely searchable, so you can just grab them if you need them. Meanwhile, the big birds are the deck's main payoffs that you want to search with Eglen. You don't want to play too many tribute summons because they're somewhat bricky, but you want to play enough for them to have a wide coverage of interaction. As a result, you'll usually see at least 2 copies of Empen because it's a great extender, searcher, and floodgate on your end board. But provided you already have access to it, the deck has a suite of interesting tribute summons. But most commonly, you'll see Apex Avian paired with Ryza the Mega Monarch. You can even play a Snull if you want, but usually it only shows up in very specific formats where Book of Moon-like effects are doing well. However, no matter what, getting to Empen is the deck's #1 priority, as its back row search is what enables you to play in your opponent's turn. And you do this by searching Dreaming Town, which you usually only play a single copy since you only want to grab it when you're already playing, and it's pretty easy to recur from the graveyard and banished pile if you need it again. You can also play in your opponent's turn with Magnificent Map, which you have to play at as many copies as the ban list will allow alongside Advent of Adventure, which can search for any other Floowandereeze monster. These are some of your best consistency options that also help you play through hand traps. Alongside this, you'll also play a copy of Unexplored Winds because it's a solid removal of any card your opponent has across the course of your regular combo. So it's a great search if you already have everything else. In fact, most of Floowandereeze's back row is pretty great. The only one that doesn't see as much play is Scary Sea, which you can run in the side deck in certain formats where it could be devastating, but it's not really worth it in the main deck. These 3 different gears of the deck interact with each other in an incredibly profitable way. The back row helps the little birds get to the big birds, and the big birds get to the back row, which you can use to help the little birds and the cycle continue. But let's dig into why these 3 elements manage to interact so well. Every one of the level 1 Floowandereeze monsters have virtually the same effects. A continuous effect that forces them to banish whenever they leave the field via any means, an effect that lets you add them back from banishment to hand whenever you summon a winged beast, and last but not least, an effect that triggers when they're normal summoned to do something unique, and then lets you normal summon a winged beast after. These effects come with one of the harshest restrictions a deck can have, and lock you out of special summons for the entire turn if you use them, which forces Floowandereeze to be almost entirely reliant on its own engine to actually win games. However, despite how oppressive this lock is, Floowandereeze is more than capable of winning through its own merit due to how strong these effects are in tandem, as well as the great payoffs they provide. The banishment effect of these birds, as well as how this interacts with their first effect, is what makes them so recursive, as it means if they leave the field by any means, whether it's your opponent's removal or by tributing them off, they get banished, which gives you an opportunity to add them to hand for later use, ensuring that you always have access to them. But this is helpful for more than just follow-up, because if you banish these birds from the deck via Magnificent Map or Gold Sarcophagus and normal summon any bird, You can use this banishment effect as a way to easily get access to your best starters without needing to open them. That's not even where its utility ends, because as well as getting your combo in, it can even protect itself by giving you the chance to chain block the effects of your normal summon birds, preventing them from being hit with an Ash Blossom. This effect basically makes every one of the small Flu monsters a strong part of the deck, but it's their on-summon effects that make them unique. Robina's effect, for example, lets you add any level 4 or lower winged beast monster from your deck to hand, and then you can normal summon a winged beast. This can get you to a lot of different things. Back when Barrier Statue was legal, you'd see Flu pilots use Robina to search it from the deck and normal summon to floodgate an opponent out of the game. But with Statue gone, the number of generic choices of Robina now boils down to Samorg Bird of Perfection for extension and DD Crow for interaction. But that's honestly fine because Robina is usually searching for another one of your Floowandereeze monsters anyways to give access to whatever you need at any given time and continue your chain of normal summons. Searching for Stree, for example, is a great choice if there's a card in either graveyard that you really need banished for one reason or another, because its unique second effect simply lets you target a card in the graveyard and banish it, and then you can normal summon a winged beast monster from your hand. This is some amazing utility to deprive your opponent of their graveyard resources, and can even be used as an interruption with the right timing during your opponent's turn. But you can also use this effect to benefit you, either by clearing your own graveyard so you can activate Dimension Shifter, or by using Stree in combination with Toucan. Because Toucan's unique effect of normal summon lets you target a banished Floowandereeze card, add it to your hand, and then you can normal summon a winged beast. This effect is pretty solid on its own since it lets you add back any of your banished resources, and is especially effective on cards that can't recur themselves like Dreaming Town or Empen, which you can use Stree to banish and to later add back with Toucan, which is pretty crazy in grinder games. Toucan also pairs excellently with Magnificent Map. As with the Toucan in hand, you can use Map to banish any Flu card from your deck and use Toucan to retrieve it, which can make the card somewhat of a pseudo-searcher for whatever you need. But generally speaking, one of your most valuable searches with Robina will be grabbing Eglen, because Eglen's unique effect lets you add any level 7 or higher winged beast monster from your deck to hand, and then you can normal summon a winged beast monster. This is one of the deck's most important effects, so much so that it's usually the target of hand traps interaction, because if they can negate your Eglen, then they're stopping you from getting Empen, which stops you from searching Dreaming Town, which cuts off both your ability to interact with your opponent and your follow-up. But if Eglen does resolve, you have access to a bunch of potent tribute summons to suit every potential situation. More than anything else, you'll be using Eglen to search for Empen, the end of Flu's migration that gives them a pretty substantial reward for their long journey. While the tribute summon Empen is in the monster zone, your opponent is locked out of using effects of any special summon monsters in attack position. But that's not all. Because once during every battle, if Empen is battling, you can banish a card from your hand to have the attack of the monster it's battling. These effects alone make Empen a bomb of a boss monster, and one that's astonishingly difficult for an opponent to remove from the field. Anything they special summon in attack position is essentially a vanilla monster since they can't use their effects. This can be incredibly oppressive because in the modern era, Link monsters are one of the most easily accessible and versatile extra deck types in the game, and are used for just about everything from board building to board breaking, and they can only ever be summoned in attack mode, which means that Empen alone has the capability to virtually shut down Link-based strategies of removal by itself. And it's not like you can just beat over it either because of its battle trick, which essentially forces your opponent into making a monster with 5400 attack just to crash with an Empen, which by itself is a crazy investment of resources, but is even harder because of Empen's Floodgate. Banishing a card from hand isn't even a big deal either, as Floowandereeze is more than capable of making up that advantage, especially if you banish your little birds, which can just be added back to hand later. So the only real way to deal with an opponent's Empen is with a generic board breaker, or by summoning everything in defense mode to get to your removal effects, which, while very possible, almost guarantees the Floowandereeze pilot is going to survive the turn, which gives them an extra chance at using their follow-up to completely out-advantage and outgun an opponent. And that's all just from Empen existing on the field. Because like the smaller birds, Empen has an effect when it tribute summon to let you search for any Floowandereeze back row and then normal summon a monster. But in the case of Empen, you normal summon any monster and not just winged beasts. This part of Empen's effect on top of a Floodgate gives it an absurd amount of utility. The fact that this lets you normal summon an extra time is great for extension, because if you have access to a decent chunk of your Flu engine, you can just use this to add yet another tribute summon to your end board, potentially even a second Empen to use the effect a second time, because it has no hard once per turn. Some Floowandereeze strategies even take advantage of the fact that it lets you normal summon anything and incorporate a small Dogmatica package to use Empen to normal summon Ecclesia and search for Dogmatica punishment, although this currently isn't too popular since it isn't that reliable. But of course, the craziest part of this already crazy card is that you get to search out for any one of your amazingly strong back row cards. The card you'll usually grab is Floowandereeze in the Dreaming Town, because it's the main card that lets you play during your opponent's turn, as its on-field effect allows you to, in the main phase, normal summon a level 4 or lower wing beast monster. This effect is simple because that's all it needs to be. By the time you search it off of an Empen, you've already guaranteed that you have the setup to properly take advantage of Dreaming Town and go through the entire Floo line to get to one of your tribute summons during your opponent's turn. And because it can be activated at any point during the main phase, you have the choice of when to actually start the combo, allowing you to wait until the most opportune moment for your negate or removal to hit the field. But this effect does more than just provide interaction, even though that part is pretty important. It ensures an absurd amount of follow-up, because you get to search with Robina again and add back banished cards back to your hand for the next turn. This is what's so terrifying about Floowandereeze. Their advantage scales every single turn. If they can combo off on their first turn, they are guaranteed to be able to on your opponent's turn, and if they can combo off in your opponent's turn, they're going to be able to do an absurd amount on their turn 3, likely leading them to being able to OTK or set up for yet another turn to allow them to combo off yet again during their opponent's turn by adding back Dreaming Town with Toucan to do it all over again. That's not even where Dreaming Town's utility ends though, as it's pretty unique amongst Floowandereeze cards, because it's the only card in the archetype to have a graveyard effect that lets you banish it when you tribute summon a level 7 or higher monster to set every monster your opponent controls, but this effect is a hard once per turn. This means that so long as Dreaming Town hits the graveyard, even if you go through the Floo combo lines and summon a Wing Beast tribute summon that doesn't have any kind of useful effect, you still have an amazing interaction. Because by flipping all of your opponent's cards face down at the right time, you prevent your opponent from being able to use those monsters, either for extra deck plays or for their on-field effects, making it a really crazy piece of bonus interaction. However, if you already have access to Dreaming Town, an alternative search target is Magnificent Map, as it gives you an alternative way of playing on your opponent's turn, since it lets you normal summon a Floowandereeze monster from your hand whenever your opponent normal summons a monster. And this is a pretty great way to get your combo flowing during their turn if your opponent hits a Dreaming Town with a Cosmic Cyclone before the main phase, or if they hand trap your birds on your first attempt to combo. But instead of searching for a map, you'd honestly rather have it in your opening hand, because its first effect is one of Floo's best consistency options, as it allows you to reveal a level 1 Floowandereeze monster in your hand, banish a Floo card with a different name from your deck, and then normal summon the monster you revealed. The reason why this is so crazy is because of the banishment effect of your little birds, which you'll likely trigger after you normal summon with map, letting you add them back to your hand. This essentially means that map and any little bird in hand gets you into your main combo, as you can use it to banish Robina or Eglen, summon the bird you revealed and trigger its effect on Chainlink 1, while adding back your banished bird as Chainlink 2, which will give you the opportunity to normal summon it on a new chain. But even if you have access to Robina already, map is a great way to start the turn anyways. You don't give up your regular normal summon to use it, so you can save your regular normal for if you get hand trapped as a way to extend. But your opponent might not even have the opportunity to hand trap you, because by using map, you protect your little birds from being directly responded to, since you can activate your banished birds as Chainlink 2, preventing the likes of an Ash Blossom. Meanwhile, if you want to play around at infinite impermanence, map gives you the same opportunity to beat it, because even if something like an Eglen is negated, you can use map in combination with Toucan to banish Empen and add it to your hand through Toucan's on summon effect, essentially making it so your opponent's hand traps didn't really do anything to stop you. But another way of beating a card like Imperm is through Floowandereeze and the Advent of Adventure, a quick play spell that banishes a winged beast from your hand or field for cost so that you can add any Floowandereeze monster or field spell from your deck to your hand, and even gives you a free 500 life because of the lunch that's null packed for you. This is generally an amazing searcher that gets you whatever combo piece you want, including map with a cost that's really easy to fulfill and works with even your non-Floowandereeze wing beasts. But this cost is actually used as a benefit. Having a Floowandereeze monster banished is generally solid for chain blocking, but you can Advent in response to Infinite Impermanence or Effect Veiler to remove the targeted bird from the field before the negation has a chance to apply, letting you get their effects off and continue your chain of normal summons. But again, Advent is a card that you'd rather have in your hand rather than something you'd actively going to search for, but it is at least a good option to have available. Floowandereeze in the Unexplored Winds, however, is a great alternative search for Empen if you have everything else set up. Its second effect lets you reveal up to 2 winged beasts in your hand, put them at the bottom of your deck, and then draw the same number of cards. This can be somewhat useful for helping you unbreak a bad hand full of tribute summons. But where this effect really shines is in how much it helps your grind game, as not only can you put back some of your duplicate birds you already have access to for some better draws, you can put back your tribute summon so that Eglen has targets to search and can use its effect. But the best part about Unexplored Winds is its continuous effect, which lets you tribute summon a monster that requires 2 tributes by sending 1 monster you control and any card your opponent controls to the graveyard, which effectively makes it removal for just about anything, including your opponent's back row, giving the deck an easy way of dealing with floodgates, boss monsters, and even towers-like monsters. So as long as they're not entirely unaffected and only unaffected by activated effects. That just about does it for the back row that you'd usually play and that can be searched with Empen. But there is one more Floowandereeze trap card that's rarely ever played and usually only sided. Floowandereeze and the Scary Sea. Its effect isn't terrible. You can only activate it if you control a face-up tribute summon monster and no special summon monsters. And it lets you negate a summon of opponent's monsters like Solemn Judgment would, then you return that monster to the hand, then your opponent is locked out of special summoning for the rest of the turn, but they get a chance to do 3 normal summons this turn rather than 1. This card can basically turn skip against a ton of different strategies. But the reason why it's not really played outside of specific formats is because it's not really something you want to search with Empen, because you just have better targets available. And it's not something you want to hard open either, as it only really works if you control a tribute summon monster, which means it's virtually useless if you don't have your setup. But even though Scary Sea might not seem amazing, the sheer versatility that a card like Empen has, and what it can search in all of these targets, makes it without a doubt the best tribute summon you can go for on turn 1. But there are still some pretty great alternative options if you already got Empen on field, or if you're playing on your opponent's turn. Apex Avian, for example, is just an Omni Negate, whose only condition is that you return a Mist Valley card to the hand, which can include itself. This effect is generally just quite strong as an added piece to your end board by protecting your combo and Empen from common board breakers, or by giving you a chance to negate your opponent's best play, and the condition just means that they contribute summon Avian out again later, or return it to the deck with unexplored wins. While if you need removal, you can instead go for Rise of the Mega Monarch during your opponent's turn. You have to time this effect correctly since it happens when the card is tribute summoned, but it lets you target 1 card in the field and 1 card in the graveyard, and return them both to the top of the deck in any order. And if you tribute a wind monster for the summon, you can also target another card in the field and return it to the hand. This is a great effect and one that can deprive your opponent of both their on-field and graveyard resources, letting you put back an opponent's boss monster or combo enabler as well as their best graveyard effect. And because a lot of Floowandereeze monsters happen to be wind, you're likely to get the bonus target too, giving you another way to remove a potential threat. However, you can also use Ryza on your own cards as well, which opens up for some pretty interesting options, such as returning Ryza to the hand so that you can use this effect again on a later turn, or returning a used Dimension Shifter in your graveyard to the top of your deck, so that when Shifter's Banish effect wears off on your turn, you'll top deck Shifter and you'll have a clear graveyard to use Shifter again and keep your opponent locked under its banish. And that's pretty much it for the tribute summons you'll usually play. But you also have another potential interesting options for Eglen searches depending on the format or the decks you'll face. Snull, for example, isn't usually played, but its interruption is solid even though it's already represented in Dreaming Town's graveyard effect. Still, it's a pretty solid option that's fine to run at 1, especially since its piercing gives you some solid OTK potential. Meanwhile, against macro-focused strategies, you can go for Dark Simorgh, which prevents your opponent from setting any cards, virtually shutting down most trap decks. You can even hand-lib an opponent in Flu with Earthbound Immortal Viral Kocha Raska, although this is fairly gimmicky. These tribute summon payoffs give the deck a great way of turning their advantage into something tangible, but it's each part of the deck working together that makes it as strong as it is, even disregarding all the busted staples that you can use alongside the deck to strengthen it even further. Cards like Shifter and Harpy's Featherstorm absolutely do a ton to help out this strategy, acting as ways to skip an opponent's turn and prevent them from playing. But Flu is more than just these cards. Its engine applies an insane amount of pressure once it gets going, and the interruptions it puts up are genuinely devastating. So it's no wonder the deck is always on the outskirts of meta contention. You have to be more than just a bird brain to win with the deck.